The silk felt cool and impossibly smooth against my skin, a stark contrast to the knot of dread coiling in my stomach. I'd bought it with my first real paycheck after graduation, a small splurge for myself, a symbol of independence. Now, it was the epicenter of a storm I hadn't seen coming. My mother's voice, sharp and reedy, cut through the tense silence of the living room. Give it back. Now. You have no right to keep what isn't yours. Her eyes, usually a soft hazel, were narrowed, glacial. Beside her, my stepfather, Mark, stood with his arms crossed, a posture that broadcasted his solidarity with her demands. He was a man of few words, but his silences often spoke volumes, and tonight, his silence was a heavy, suffocating weight. My initial instinct was confusion, then a prickle of indignation. It was my dress. I'd earned it. But the sheer force of their shared resolve, the way they looked at me not as their daughter, but as an adversary, sent a shiver down my spine. The air crackled with an unspoken accusation, a deeply unsettling sense that I was being judged for something I didn't understand. It had started subtly, a few weeks prior. Small comments about my spending habits, veiled criticisms of my life choices. Mark, who had been a fixture in my life for nearly a decade, had always been a quiet presence, a buffer between me and my mother's more volatile moods. He'd offered a steady hand, a listening ear. Or so I'd thought. Now, he seemed to have morphed into her enforcer, his quietness replaced by an unnerving, almost aggressive passivity. The dress was a wedding gift. Not to me, but to my mother. A beautiful emerald green silk gown, a piece of clothing she'd cherished, worn only on special occasions. It had been my grandmother's, passed down through generations. My mother had always spoken of it with reverence, a tangible link to her own past. Then, a few months ago, during a particularly difficult time for me, a painful breakup, a setback at work, she had offered it. Take it, honey, she'd said, her voice thick with sympathy. Wear it. Feel beautiful. You deserve it. I'd been touched, grateful for the gesture, for the small spark of confidence it ignited. I'd worn it to a friend's engagement party, feeling a sense of grace and renewed self-worth. That was where the unraveling began. After the party, I'd carefully laundered and pressed the dress, intending to return it the following week. But life, as it often does, intervened. A family emergency, a demanding project at work, and suddenly, weeks had passed. When I finally called to arrange its return, my mother's tone was different. Guarded. She'd agreed to pick it up, but the conversation had felt stilted, unnatural. I'd put it down to stress on her end. Then came the visit, unannounced, which led to this present confrontation. My mother's insistence that I had taken advantage of her generosity, her voice rising with each word. Mark, standing beside her, his gaze fixed on me, his expression unreadable. It felt like a scene from a play where I'd missed the first act. I don't understand, I managed, my voice trembling slightly. You gave it to me. You said I could wear it. The words felt hollow, even to me, as they left my lips. That was then, my mother retorted, her hand reaching out, her fingers twitching as if she wanted to snatch the garment I was wearing. A small, involuntary movement that spoke volumes about her current state. Things have changed. It's not appropriate for you to be wearing that dress anymore. And besides, she paused, a glint in her eye that I couldn't decipher, a momentary flicker that might have been calculation, it's valuable. We need it back. The phrase "we need it back" echoed in my mind. It wasn't about sentiment or her own desire to wear it. It was about possession. About control. Mark shifted his weight, his gaze dropping to the floor for a fleeting moment before returning to me, his expression hardening. It was a barely perceptible movement, yet it felt significant, a subtle shift in his alliance. Just give it back, Sarah. It's not worth the trouble. The pronouncement was delivered with a flatness that suggested he'd rehearsed it. Trouble. The word hung in the air, a veiled threat, a warning thinly disguised as practical advice. I looked at them, at the unified front they presented, their bodies angled towards me, a silent testament to their shared purpose. A chilling realization washed over me. This wasn't about the dress. It was about something else entirely. A power play. A test. And I had failed, at least in their eyes. I felt a surge of something cold and hard bloom in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a quiet, calculating clarity, a detachment that surprised even me. I could feel the eyes of my neighbors through the thin walls, the inevitable gossip that would follow this scene. My mother was a master of creating drama, and Mark, it seemed, was happy to play his part, his sigh. Lent a fertile ground for her accusations. I took a deep breath, the silk rustling softly against my skin. I knew, in that moment, that any attempt to reason with them would be futile. They had already made up their minds, their judgment passed before any evidence had been presented. They wanted to humiliate me, to reassert their authority, to remind me of my place. And they thought they had me cornered, trapped within the confines of their expectations and their accusations. Fine, I said, my voice unervingly calm, betraying none of the turmoil within. I walked past them, not to my bedroom to change as they undoubtedly expected, but towards the front door. I'll get it for you. I didn't look back, not wanting to give them the satisfaction of witnessing my supposed defeat. I could feel their eyes on my back, a mixture of triumph and perhaps a sliver of surprise at my unexpected compliance. I went to my room, not to take off the dress, but to grab my phone and my keys, the mundane actions a stark contrast to the emotional battlefield I was leaving behind. I walked out of the house, leaving them standing in the hallway, expecting me to return in a state of defeated submission. Instead, I drove to a small, independent boutique I'd always admired, a place known for its curated collection of unique pieces. The owner, a kind woman named Eleanor, was a friend of a friend, someone whose good taste I trusted implicitly. I explained my situation, not in a dramatic outpouring of emotion, but with quiet, measured words, letting the facts speak for themselves. I showed her the dress. It was exquisite, truly, a testament to craftsmanship and timeless design. And it was mine, in every sense of the word, a symbol of my hard-earned independence. Eleanor listened, her brow furrowed with concern, her gaze assessing the garment with a professional eye. We talked for a while, and then, she had an idea. A brilliant, subtle idea that resonated with my own quiet determination. She offered to consign the dress for me, to display it in her shop as a unique, vintage piece. The price we agreed upon was more than I'd paid for it, a testament to its quality and Eleanor's keen eye for such things. She even offered to take some professional photos of it, styled beautifully, for her social media, capturing its essence and appeal. The next few days were a strange kind of quiet, a deliberate silence on my part. I didn't respond to my mother's increasingly frantic calls or Mark's terse texts. I let them stew in their own manufactured crisis, in the vacuum of my non-response. I knew what they were expecting: tears, apologies, a desperate plea for forgiveness or understanding. I gave them silence, a far more potent weapon in this particular skirmish. Then, Eleanor posted the photos. The dress, bathed in soft light, looked magnificent, its emerald hue vibrant and alluring. The caption was simple, elegant, highlighting its timeless beauty and unique history, a subtle narrative woven into its presentation. She used a few carefully chosen hashtags, each one a deliberate brushstroke on the canvas of its new story. One of them, something about heirloom treasures and finding new homes for exquisite pieces, caught fire, igniting a spark that quickly became a blaze. Within hours, the post was being shared, its reach extending far beyond the boutique's usual clientele. People were commenting, asking about its provenance, its designer. Strangers were tagging friends, drawn to its undeniable allure. The boutique's follower count surged. And then, someone shared it on a popular fashion forum, with the caption, "Look at this stunning dress. Anyone know its story?" The comments flooded in. People were speculating, admiring, their words a cascade of appreciation. And then, a few of my mother's acquaintances, people who knew the dress and knew me, chimed in. They mentioned my name, spoke of my taste, of my recent graduation, of my appreciation for vintage fashion. The narrative shifted, subtly but irrevocably. Suddenly, it wasn't about a dress being demanded back. It was about a young woman, Sarah, showcasing her impeccable style and her discerning eye for quality, the dress a symbol of her personal journey and burgeoning independence. My mother's phone calls became more agitated, her voice higher-pitched, laced with a frantic, almost panicked tone. Her texts were no longer accusatory, but filled with a desperate plea for information, a clear indication of her growing unease. She was starting to realize the implications, the potential for social fallout, the whispers that would inevitably follow such a public display of familial discord. The potential for her own actions to be misinterpreted, to make her look petty, grasping, and frankly, a little unhinged, was dawning on her. Mark's texts went from terse to outright desperate. He kept asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, his carefully constructed impassivity crumbling under the press. Year of the unfolding situation. The roles had reversed. They were now the ones seeking reassurance, desperately trying to gauge the extent of the damage they had inadvertently inflicted. The real kicker, though, came a week later. My cousin, Brenda, who had attended the same engagement party where I'd worn the dress, messaged me. Brenda was a social butterfly, always in the know, her fingers perpetually on the pulse of any local drama. She sent me a screenshot of a private group chat. The subject line read, "Sarah's dress drama." In it, a group of my mother's friends and Mark's colleagues were dissecting the situation, the online buzz about the dress, and, crucially, my mother's aggressive demand. One comment read, "Honestly, Clara was so out of line. Sarah looked stunning. And that dress is a classic. It's a shame she tried to embarrass her own daughter." Another added, with a note of almost gleeful malice, "I saw the pictures online. It's beautiful. Sarah has such good taste. Clara always was a bit possessive." Mark's name was mentioned too, his passive support of my mother being framed as almost complicit, his silence a tacit endorsement of her actions. The conversation was a brutal, honest assessment of their behavior, all fueled by the very public, very positive attention the dress had garnered online. It was a stark reminder that the court of public opinion, even amongst a small, interconnected circle, could be unforgiving. I never did get another direct demand for the dress. My mother stopped calling altogether for a while, the silence a palpable absence in my life. When we finally spoke, weeks later, the conversation was stilted, awkward, a careful dance around the unresolved issue. She skirted around the entire incident, talking about the weather, her garden, anything but the elephant in the room. Mark, when I saw him at a distant family gathering, offered a tight, forced smile, a quick nod of acknowledgement that barely masked his discomfort. The unspoken had become a chasm between us, a silent testament to the damage done. They had tried to assert their authority, to control me through shame and coercion, to wield their power in a way that would leave me diminished. Instead, the quiet unveiling of the dress, its rediscovery by a wider audience, had subtly, irrevocably, shifted the narrative. They had wanted a scene, a spectacle of my humiliation. They got one, but it was of themselves, their petty possessiveness laid bare for all to see. And for me, the silk dress, now sold and its value appreciated by strangers who understood its true worth, was no longer just a garment. It was a quiet testament to the fact that sometimes, the most effective response to being underestimated, to being unjustly accused, is simply to let the truth, and a touch of elegance, speak for itself.